You know, it doesn't matter where in Dominica you were born and raised, chances are you have a story about a Sukuya, a Lugahu, and who in the neighborhood was accused of doing what. So that is what we're here for today. We're here to celebrate our culture. We are here to celebrate our traditions. So coming in as we get ready to share with you. So I want to introduce the other contributors to the program, Dr. Thompson Fontaine and Mrs. Tina Bell de Ramon. So Tina, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tina. Most of you would know me as those way back as Tina Bell. I'm glad to be on the program this afternoon, and I'm telling you, it's going to be something we're all going to enjoy because I have some stories, and I'm sure Thompson has to share. We're going to have a jolly good time.
Yes, and we're looking forward to it. Thompson.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I am, I tell you, Simon and Tina, it's so good to be on this program. It's so good to be talking about something that is really much a part of us, part of our history, part of our heritage, part of what we call ourselves as Dominicans. And I'm really delighted to be with both of you this, well, I was going to say tonight, but it's afternoon your time. I'm delighted to be on and yeah, I'm looking forward to it, absolutely. Lots of interesting information there. Certainly looking forward to that.
Yes, and of course, we welcome everyone who's joining us on Facebook as well, everyone who will join us on TDN Radio and Q95 for Lifeline on Sunday morning. So Thompson, can we just begin with a historic perspective of the whole concept of Sukuya and Lagarous and Lugahu? By the way, what's the difference between a Lagarous and a Lugahu?
Okay, it's good that you, and it's important that we define that, a Lagarous is the female, and so a Lagarous is really the Sukuya. You can say Lagarous or Sukuya as the female part of the thing, and then you have the Lugawu that is male. Yeah, so you have the Lugawu male, and then Lagarous or Sukuya as the female. Interestingly enough, the history of that type of thing comes back to us from Africa. In fact, our ancestors who came from West Africa brought those beliefs with them to the slave plantations. And one of our most famous, in fact, our most famous Maroon leaders, Bala, was a firm believer in Obia. And in fact, one of the things when Bala was eventually caught, when he was shot by the British, and he told them that they should bury his Obia before him. And the only things he asked about were three things. He asked about his wife, Kanda, his son, and his Obia. And he told them that they should bury his Obia before him. And his Obia consisted of some human hair that he had involved, encased in a bag, human hair, and some other items. Now, I want to read for you as we start this conversation. I want to read from a newspaper going back to 1816. And it gives a very interesting account of the whole, where it kind of originated. And it talks about the fact that the slaves on the plantations, they practice this form of what they call obi. Now, obi goes back to the ancient Egyptians. And what happened was when the Africans who practiced this in West Africa, they practiced that type of kind of occult or high science, they brought it with them. And a British writer wrote in 1816, he described some of the Obia men who we call Sukuya and Lugawo as such. And I want to read this very quickly. It says, these ugly, loathsome creatures thus became oracles of woods and unfrequented places, and were resorted to secretly by the wretched in mind and by the malicious for wicked purposes. Obi and gambling are the only instance I have been able to discover among the natives of the Negro land in Africa in which any effort at combining ideas have ever been demonstrated. The science of Obi is very extensive. Obi, for the purpose of bewitching people, or consuming them by lingering illness is made of grave dirt, hair, teeth of sharks and other creatures, blood, feathers, eggshells, images in wax, the hearts of birds, and some potent roots, weeds, and bushes, of which Europeans are at this time ignorant, but which were known for the same purposes to the ancients. Certain mixtures of these ingredients are burnt or buried very deep in the ground, or hung upon a chimney, or laid under the threshold of the door of the party to suffer with incantation, songs of curses performed at midnight regarding the aspect of the moon. The party who wants to do the mischief is also sent to burying grounds or some secret place which spirits are supposed to frequent to invoke his dead parents to assist him in the curse. A Negro who thinks himself bewitched by Obi will apply to an Obi man or Obi in coma or woman for cure. These magicians will interrogate the patient after the part of the body most afflicted. This part they will torture with pinching, drawing with gourds or calabashes, beating and pressing when the patient is exhausted by this rough magnetizing. The Obi brings on an old rusty nail, a piece of twine, or an old toothbrush, or the jaw of a rat, or a fragment of squat bottle from the part, and the patient is well the next day. So that is an account in going back to the year 1816 in a British newspaper where an observer noted the practice of Obi or Obia, because the word Obia came from the word Obi. Obi was the word they used in Egypt, and that was what was carried through to the Caribbean. So that is how we came into this whole notion of Obia, and it is most practiced probably more heavily in Haiti. The idea that you can hurt somebody, that you can do something evil to somebody. And these men and women became revered. They became revered. And in fact, the British initially, like when slavery started in Dominica in the British started importing slaves into Dominica in 1647. It took the British almost 200 years to understand the importance of Obia. And in 1816, the British passed a law that actually punished, that actually put to death any woman or man, any Lagarous or Sukuya who was found would be put to death. All right, the law was passed in 1816 by the Dominica Parliament. It became Dominica's law that if anybody was caught in the act of Obia, which is what we're talking about, they would be put to death.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So again, if you're just joining us, we are here celebrating Dominica's oral story tradition. It's a collaboration of a number of people, including Dr. Thompson Fontaine, Mrs. Tina Bell de Ramon, as well as TDN Radio, Push Past 10, and Q95 FM. So we're all coming together just to celebrate who we are, to celebrate our traditions, our culture, and the focus today is on our oral storytelling traditions, including all those scary stories we heard as children about Obia, Sukuya, Lugahu. So we're hoping that you will bring your stories as well. So if you have a story along the same vein, feel free to share it if you're joining us on Facebook Live. So Tina, what would you like to say on the topic?
Oh, well, actually, I think as a child, our first experience of talking about Obia Sukuya was the word Jambi. Mm-hmm. And when we were kids, everybody would sort of, if you do anything, they would scare us with the word Jambi. I remember as a little girl, I had a neighbor and she was like more like a bully to me when she wanted something of mine. And she'd say, I'm going to put your name write it on a paper and put it in the cemetery for Jambi to take you. Now the thing is, I used to be so scared. You know, so the thing, you never thought for a moment that was a child like you. Why the heck she going to the cemetery at night time to put your name? Right. Should be scared too. But then that was just scare tactics. But but like everything else, we know we talk about Sukuyas and the Lugawu, and the Lugawu the man and the Lagarous the woman, who would have, normally she's portrayed as a pretty woman and appears to men, and should have like one foot like a hoof, like a goat's foot, right? And she would lure these men away. And then when they did find themselves with the story they told afterwards, She ended up being an ugly woman, and she would trip them. She would just lure them towards and drive them into some place where they would find them either naked or something, you know. So these are the little stories, you know, about Sukuyas and Lugawut, and of course the Sukuya stories that they would come into the house and suck you. You know that. So to avoid the sucking, you have to put salt or grains of salt or sand at the front of the house. So that would stall them. So they would have to count it one by one. So naturally, by the time they get to whatever, daybreak would have come. So they couldn't enter the house. And garlic, of course. So these were some of the stories we heard about Sukuyas. But mine, I'm telling you, when you're a child and you get those stories and you go to bed, you're so scared. I used to cover my whole head with the sheet up to my eyes at nighttime, because you're afraid of Sukuyas or any of those things coming and pulling your foot.
And I'm wondering if that was the purpose of the stories. Was it the purpose of the stories to keep children in line so they would be obedient?
Yeah, yes, you know what I mean? To keep us in line, but with all the myths and legends, there's some truth to it, you know. There's so much truth to this Sukuya thing. I'm telling you, well, when you're small, you're scared of that. But as you grow older, you put that at the back of your mind. But then I had an experience which, it's strange. It's not that I encountered the Sukuya, you know. But, you know, we have this story about Sukuyas always, they have to remove their skin and they have to put it under a big stone. And then after they're done with all their night flights and stuff, they would get their skin back. Now, in my younger days, when I worked in the government service, government headquarters, there was a strange thing that happened. There was this woman they found by the river somewhere. It could be up east, you know, Delhi or somewhere. They found this woman by the river, and she was dead, of course, and she had no skin on.
Really?
No skin on. And you would have thought that was a myth, the people just saying this stuff. But I think that was on Wibbs Radio. There was this station, local station called Wibbs Radio in those days. But added to that, you know, you're curious. And in those days, well, the police photographer had gone and taken photos. And the attorney general at the time was Leo Austin. And then some of us at government headquarters, his office was a floor above ours. We went to the office to look at those photos. And there was this lady, because they found it so strange. This picture of this woman, she had no epidermis. She was just clean. And some people said that she was burnt, but there was nothing to indicate that she was burned by acid or by fire. She was just clean from face to her toes, because the photos were kind of enlarged. And I don't know whatever happened to that case. I guess maybe they just put that in the archives and forgot about it. But that one was strange. And then my whole thing about Sukuyas was sort of opened up again, you know? And they were saying, was she a Sukuya? Why was she? What was the mystery? Nobody found out. She was just there. They got her, as I said, clean, nice skin, all the top skin off.
Wow.
So I don't know what was the mystery.
No, wow, no, that is. Did you ever hear about that story up east from Thompson? No, not of the specific one, but I heard of the fact that they had to take their skin off. That was a critical part of the initiation of what they had to do. You know, remove the skin, put it in a mortar pestle, pong it, and all of that. You know, but I never heard of that one in particular. But it's amazing. Like you said, I mean, for us as children, these were real. That was not something that was imagined. That was real, because you heard those stories, you believed them. In fact, every label, you know what the label is?
Yeah,
the firefly.
The firefly.
Was a Sukuya.
The Lalo was the bigger ones. The Lalo is the big guys. These were the local, and we would be terrified, because at nights, remember, there was no lights in the country at the time, and then these things would be flashing by the window, and your whole skin would start crawling. because you look outside of the window, looking, knocking on the, because obviously they're trying the lights on the inside, by the candle lights on the, so they're trying to come in and they're hitting against the, the glass, and you in there, you're terrified because you were told bright lights there. Luga was trying to come into the house.
No, Thompson, tell the story of when you had to walk home at night.
Yeah, I actually wrote about that before, and that was because, as I said, you grew up believing that and knowing that Lalo and Logo. And one night we had a meeting at the health center in Grand Fort. It was a village council meeting, and I went as a kid, and I fell asleep. When I got up, everybody had left. Everybody had gone home, and I was out there. It was probably about midnight or so, and I had to walk home. My God, that was the most frightful, the most difficult, because everything that you ever heard about Luga or Sukuya came back. Mm-hmm. So to begin with, I had to walk, and I am walking home, and I am so scared. You could hear my heart pounding from a mile. And I am walking, and I expecting any time to be snatched. I expecting a touch on my shoulder or something, because for the first time I was exposed. Because normally you inside and so on, you giving stories with your siblings, but for the first time I was exposed, and that was the most terrible night for me. And I remember that up to this day, like it was yesterday. The fear, the worry that a Sukuya or Luga would chase me down at night. And when I made it home, I could not believe that I was home and safe, But it's that kind of thing, it's that kind of fear that you develop. But also, as children, we not only did we hear about it, but people tell us, well, this person is a Sukuya.
Yes.
All right, this man is a Luga. So we actually believe that these people had, and the other thing, let me just say before Chida comes in, the other thing that was so critical for us is that we were always told that we need to avoid these individuals. So you have to avoid the Luga and the Sukuya. Don't let them touch your head. And I remember we were going to do common entrance examinations, and there was this girl, there was this lady, there was this young child that was walking with us. And the lady touched this child's head. And this child cried from the time we left, from the time we reached Lapland. The child cried throughout because by her parents and other people, don't let anybody touch your head, because people are Sukuya. They will touch your head and you will not pass.
But not just that, Thompson, not just that, but remember in the summertime you had to take baths with all sorts of herbs and bushes to make sure you were protected.
Yes. But I'm telling you how it was not just something that you imagine. I remember this child. Crying.
Wow,
crying, terrified, because this lady in the village that.
Yeah, I think your volume went. Yeah, I think your volume went, Thompson. Is he muted?
Apparently.
Yes. Thompson, can you hear us? I think your mic was muted for a minute. Yeah, go ahead, Tina. Let's see if Thompson will be able to come back on.
Okay. No, I think he spoke about walking home by himself and feeling scared. And at that time, I think every little thing looks like a Sukuya to you. The lights, maybe the moonlight on a branch of a tree or something of this sort. Everything scares you at the time.
Yeah, but, there's some infamous stories. So one that comes to mind is of the Sukuya. I don't want to say La Plaine, but I think that's where I heard she was from. And she used to fly a lot at night, and she flew to England. And the evidence was that she showed up to church. First of all, I don't know why even going to church in the first place, but she showed up to church wearing the Queen's clothes. So I just want to know, is that a valid story, or is that yet another made up incident of calling somebody a Sukuya?
Everybody knows that story. Everybody, I think, knows that story, And apparently this woman didn't die not so long ago,
Really?
according to, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, we grew up hearing that story of this woman, that really overnight went to England, got the Queen's clothes, and then the next day she was in church in La Plaine, in the Queen's clothes, in the the pearls and so on. And then about 2 years ago, so I was interviewing Mrs. Christian. She used to run a school in Dominica, the school for the blind, and her son Gabriel Christian and Dr. Sam is her son. And she said that actually what happened, and that's when I found the real story about this woman. You know, during the Second World War, apparently there were German U-boats that used to try to sink the boats, the British ships that were trying to resupply from the Caribbean going up to England to resupply the British. And they sank a few of those boats, and some things washed up on the shore in La Plaine. And this lady found a drawer with some clothes and obviously some pearls and so on. And so she when she went to the beach, she found it, and then that's what she put on her to go to church the next day. Apparently the clothes was nice, it was well enclosed and so on, and that's what she used. But then the story became that she was a Sukuya, because people were looking at her already, and an old person and so on. She's a Sukuya, and that in fact that's what it was. But that's what Miss Christian told me, that was the real story behind this lady. It's something that was washed up, and it was different. The clothes was different from what people were accustomed to and so on. And the lady thinking that she was, she found something nice and so on, and people just said that she was that. And that story just gained all over Dominica. It became the story of the day.
Everybody knows that story. And I have a question, but before I do it, we just want to acknowledge everyone who's looking on Facebook Live right now. We have quite a number of people, and let's please keep track of those who are watching us. We have Christian Paul, my mom, Medina Senhouse, Peter Carbon, Joshua Francis, who says some of our folks genuinely believed in the story of Jumbies. I heard quite a number of Sukuya stories myself. So thank you, Joshua, Valerie, Marcel, Yanni, Anthony, Simon. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So here's the question for the both of you. So how did people become labeled? Was it because of the way you carried yourself? Maybe you were a little bit antisocial. How did people get the label of Sukuya and Lugahu and all those terms that we used?
Well, normally, if there was this old lady weird, maybe keeping to herself, maybe walking on the street, mumbling to herself, people say she's a Sukuya, a Laja bless. So some people had this thing of taking some grass. There's a special grass, I think, and they would
Zebgua.
And tie it and put it at the forroad, the crossroads, to tie them. So when you put that there, these people cannot move, and for some reason they used to think that they just had to stick there and they never moved. I never had the experience of seeing a Sukuya not moving, but they used to quarrel and they used to be mad. Oh, these were some of the things. People just look at any old person, and normally they were old people and say they were Sukuyas.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That was the acid test. Acid test people would use, they would put that and kind of tie them and so on, and usually it was just old people, and years later, I reflected on how cruel it must have been for these people. The fact that they were labeled as Sukuya, they were labeled as, because Sukuya is evil, right? Because you're supposed to be sucking people's blood, you're changing your skin, you are doing people evil. It was not a good thing. And then you had all these people been labeled. But as you said, they were typically older people who were more or less kept to themselves and so on, did not interact. They would probably be walking. They usually are those who would be walking, especially if they would be walking early in the morning.
Maybe they're going to church.
Yes.
They're walking early. And I remember seeing this particular lady, like when I would go for early morning, like if you're going to run early in the morning, you see this lady, they say, look at this Sukuya out there, that kind of thing. And I just find it is really, I gave you the example of this woman, and I would look at this one, and I felt really bad afterwards that, that so all the villagers thought of her as a Sukuya, and, and so on. But I have another story, that tells you how people believed in this. You know, we had like two big Sukuya. Well,
big time Sukuya.
yeah, right. So particular lady, and there was this story that was told about this carpenter. He used to do like well, carpentry and so on, do stuff for people. And then this particular lady who was supposed to be a Sukuya gave him one piece of board, right, to build a cabinet for her. Just one piece of board. So he put the board under his house, but in the middle of the night he realized that this piece of board was supposed to kill him and his family, right? Because how could he build a cabinet from just one piece of board? So he decided that the only way to get rid of this was to take the board back to the lady's house. So he was living not too far from her, but then he took the board and he started to walk back towards the lady's house. And the story goes that as he gets closer, the board gets heavier and heavier and heavier to the point where he almost cannot carry it again. So now he's calling on God. He's saying, Papa Bondi, ba me courage pour aider moi, pour vivre kind of thing, you know, and he's praying to God to give him strength. And eventually he gets to the lady's house. He puts the board under the house, and the next day the lady dies.
Wow. Now, did that really happen?
In other words, he reversed whatever curse, whatever the lady tried on him. You know, now that was the story that was told when the lady died.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened. Now, did that really happen?
Mm-hmm.
Really, did that incident really take place? But would people go to those lengths to make up a story like that?
Mm-hmm.
That was, you know. So these are the kind of things that you kind of worry about and wonder about, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you really, it's just this.
And of course,
yeah.
And of course, let's take the comments from Facebook. So Yani says, I think every Dominican enjoys a good Sukuya story. Still today, we don't live in Dominica, and I can't have anyone touch my children's head. So I think it's kind of ingrained in us, because I also remember that not too long ago, there was a story about two Sukuyas stuck in Roseau, because apparently you weren't supposed to walk. I don't know on which side of the person you're not supposed to walk, but the women refused to cross each other because one kept telling the other to go to the other side. And they stood in Roseau for hours. And this is only about 10 years ago. But before you guys respond, I just want to remind everyone who's looking and listening to us that you're listening to a special presentation of the oral story traditions of Dominica, presented by TDN Radio, Push Past 10 and Q95 FM. So we're very happy that you're here as we celebrate our oral storytelling traditions. I am Simone Matthew, and I'm joined by Thompson Fountain and Tina Bell de Romon. So yes, so it seems like it is somewhat ingrained in us that, you know, don't have anyone touch your children's head, and then to have these two women stuck in the middle of Roseau. I think it was actually my credit union somewhere in Roseau. And they refused to pass each other.
I remember that. I remember that was not too long ago. I remember that story very, very clearly. Yeah. No, but the question of the touching of the head, we were just so careful, and not only that, but we were told that the way you acted against that was to make sure that you had the red lavender. You remember that?
Yes.
Red lavender hat. You had to put that cross in your head every day. I mean, I'm honest. Up to high school, I had my red lavender cross in my head. You know, that was the belief, and you know, you did not know better. You grew up in that type of thing, and you just did it. You know, because the red lavender. And not only that, but before you went back to school, you had to take those special baths as well. Mm-hmm. That was all part of the superstition, you know, glory cedar and other stuff that you had to bathe in. You know, all these bushes your parents would put together, you had to bathe in that and so on, so that you'd be protected.
Mm-hmm. But talking about the red lavender, there was a popular little drugstore in town called Patrick Charles Store on Cork Street, at the corner of Cork Street and Old Street. And Patrick Charles was a little short guy. And then he sold, and this, if people wanted their red lavender and asafoetida and all these sort of things, and all the love potions to get your boyfriend to come to you and girlfriend to come to you, they had to go to that place, and he would mix the potions for you. And people used to believe in this thing. And whatever he did, it was just a mind, I think. But they just said, no, 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 no. He was the best. So everybody had to go to him for the red lavender and all these little things. Patrick Charles.
Let's take some
Yeah,
comments on
yeah.
Facebook. Let's take some comments. Patricia says some old people were happy when young people called them Sukuya, so you can't mess with them and stay in your lane because you were dangerous. It's a good one. They always ended up dying in those stories. And then we have Sam Hill, the bamboo patch next to Sharpie Shop was our favorite location to Bawe, Bawe, to Bawe a particular Sukuya from, what is that? Daeguan? Apparently they were bowing a Sukuya where Sam is from. Sam is from Grand Forks.
Godfall, yes,
That's
yes,
another Grand
yes,
Forks story.
yes, yes.
What is that
That's right.
story,
That's right.
Thompson?
That's right. No, but actually, to bury them, you would have to turn your clothes a la we say,
Wrong
yeah, in
side.
wrong side. Yeah, you'd wear clothes down, and that was one of the other ways you would prove, because if you put your shirt or your t-shirt in the wrong side, they cannot cross, they
They
cannot
cannot
pass.
touch you.
They just keep, you know, going around and so on.
I used to go to sleep with my nightie on the wrong side, inside out, you know. And when you feel so good because you know no Sukuyas can touch you because your nightie back upside down or back to front, lave, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no,
You know,
what about
but is the belief? Mhm.
go ahead.
Yeah, but I was saying that is the belief now. The Luga one Sukuya, these were the kind of easier, but then the more formidable one was the Obia man. You see, the Obia man is a little bit different
Yes.
from the Luga one Sukuya, right? The Luga one Sukuya, they had like the Sukuya could do these exorbitant things, you know, travel at nights and travel to England and come back the same night kind of thing, you know, and so on. But then the Obia man, when people wanted to do people mal, you want to do somebody evil, then you would go to the Obia man. And that's what I referred to at the beginning, where that came down to us. The Obia man became this all-powerful figure. And in slavery time, he would usually be in a hut in the forest by himself, and people who wanted to do people evil would come to him. And we still have that today. I mean, I know modern day Obia people in Dominica. I remember, I will not call anybody's names, but there were people who said, well, these are people, if you want something done to your neighbor, if somebody does you wrong, that you can go to. And it's something that I believe our people believe in very, very, very strongly. In fact, not only that, but about probably 15 years ago, with the influx of the Haitians, that took on a new twist as well, because there was that particular Haitian. It was in newspapers where the police found a Haitian who had a list of names of people that he was supposed to have been. People came to him to do things to these individuals, and they found them with a skull and some bones and the names and a list of names of people. So people still today fundamentally believe in that aspect of Obia.
Absolutely. And of course, we're very happy that everyone is making a contribution on Facebook to the conversation. So Florestine Azu, there was a story about two $5 was fighting. Have you heard that story? I think this one is.
Yes, I have. I heard that in
story. I think that one is familiar too.
Granby.
In Granby, yes.
So the two $5 just stood up and decided they were gonna fight.
That's a story.
The thing is, Granby was supposed to be the epicenter.
The hub of Obia.
That had Sukuya, the most, where it was strongest. And to the extent where we were so afraid of Granby, we never wanted to go to Granby, That's where Sukuya put down, and you don't want to go to Granby at all as a child, And there was that story of, two $5 bills in the middle of the street fighting.
Patricia Fontaine says, and take jays and sprinkle outside the shops so everyone will buy from them and no one will tie up at their shop. Even the codfish and the bread used to taste some jays, so they would sprinkle. They would, and we all know jays is what is that, a detergent? So they would sprinkle it on the
Yeah,
bread
yeah. James was that very powerful. It would smell very, very strong, and so oh my goodness.
to make sure nobody ties up your shop. No Obia man, no Sukuya ties up your shop. Now let's talk about how do you avoid the Sukuya and all that stuff. And I think one of the ways I've heard of is having coins in your pockets.
I've never heard of that
Points.
one.
Yeah, having coins so
Hmm.
that if it jingles at night. You know who was mentioning that to us? Dale Dangerben when we first had the conversation. He
Okay,
said
okay, okay,
in Point
okay.
Michelle, they would walk
In
with
Port
coins
Michel.
in their pocket at night so that if anything was
Hmm.
about to attack you, then you would jingle the coins and they would leave you alone.
Ah,
Mm.
okay, yeah, that rings a big bell about the coins. Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, yes, yes. Yes,
Yes.
yeah, no, but it was quite something, But when you think about it, when you think about those traditions that were brought down, and earlier, Simon, I was telling you about another tradition, having to do with, not only we talk about Sukuya and Lugaru, but the fact of wealth, how you can use those things to gain wealth. And a very popular one was the moose. Yeah, a very popular one was the moose. And in fact, anybody, if you look in 1960s, early 70s, anybody in Dominica who had any kind of wealth, they could only have gotten it through that means. Yeah, there was talk about this man in Portsmouth who had a few trucks, and those trucks came because of the moose. Now, the story of the moose is an interesting one. It is a little bit different from the Sukuya one, but what it says is that these individuals, they would make a pact with this little moose, and I'll talk about how the moose comes about. They will make a pact with the moose, and then the moose will give them anything they want. Yeah. So, but they have to obey it, so they can get all of the money that they want and so on. But just a little moose. But the moose, you would get the moose only during Easter, and we're just a few weeks away from Easter, so it's a good time to actually talk about this. The moose would be made during the Easter time, and you would do it from an Easter egg. All right. Now, that's what we heard. But interestingly enough, there are people who actually believe this. And I will tell you a story that is just, I have written about this that is mind blowing because, I hope I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying that. He's probably looking on right now. My brother, who was a police officer, during the time of dread and so on, and the police used to go after in search of the dreads in the forest. Then they went to Casibros. They were up in the heights of Casibros. And he said they came up upon a little hut in the middle of the mountains, out in the middle of nowhere. It was just around Easter time and so on. And then they realized that there was somebody inside. Now, this person was dressed with a white shirt, a black suit, was in a black suit in the middle of the hut. Right? That's not made up, that's real, right? In the middle of the hut. So they surrounded the hut, and then they asked the person to come out because they thought he was, someone asked him to come out. The guy refused. Or no, they said no, to put his hands up. Yeah, like put your hands up, kind of thing. Police. This is the police. Put your hands up. They said the guy refused to put his hand. His hand stuck to his side, like stuck like this. But they found it strange because here it is. This guy is well dressed in black in the middle of nowhere. His hands to his side. So he said one of the cops went up and they grabbed and they pulled his hand, they pulled his hands away from his side. And when they did that, two eggs fell off.
Wow.
And the guy had eggs literally had the eggs under his hand. So that is one person, no matter what you say about the legend, what you say about this is just a story. This man believed that he could get a moose. And he was in the forest trying to get a moose.
No. And I think that's where the
would he have
danger.
succeeded if he was not interrupted by the police officers?
And I think that's where the
why
danger
was he
lies.
doing it? Is there some truth to this?
Yeah, it's dangerous because then you end up wasting all this time out in the forest thinking you can create a moose where maybe you should have spent more time in the garden harvesting your farm and making money a legitimate way instead of trying to create opportunities that do not exist. So I think that is where the danger lies. in many of these superstitions, and not just also labeling people incorrectly and having them suffer for their entire lives because someone assumed that you were Sukuya and that you were evil, when in fact you were probably getting up early in the morning to go to church. That's why you were out walking.
Yes, this moose, they had to put it under the to hatch. That's what they said, right? They had to put it under
Yes,
the,
yes, that's how you got the most. See that
and
he hatched
they would end up getting fever
on
spells.
Easter Sunday morning.
Yes, yes, fever spells and all kind of things before that became moose. But that moose used to eat a lot. They said, the one in
Really?
Portsmouth. The one in Portsmouth, when he couldn't feed the moose again, he had to get rid of it. So they said he had to go into a boat. And man, look, Deba, to get rid of that thing. Because when they had the moose in the boat, the moose wanted to turn the boat over. Until when he reached, he flung that thing, bye-bye moose. But that thing used to eat everything out of him. They used to call him by his initials, Nana, Monana, Monana.
What?
No, but talking about money, because the whole idea of having the moose was to make demands on it for money, for money. But also there were stories when I was growing up about people talk about DeLoreans. I don't know if you ever heard that, DeLorean.
Yes.
What is that?
So the thing is now, you'd see people, a man would just suddenly get mad and walk around with his pants falling and saying all kind of stupid things. And people would say, don't worry with him, DeLorean he was dealing with.
Is that like a devil figure?
Yeah, so DeLorean he was dealing with. So yourself, anything, because DeLorean is to bring money for you. I'm to make you get money. You just have to retire because so you're saying, but DeLorean he was dealing with, But or sometimes they said they read the book the wrong way. They had to read it upside down, and they turned into a goat. So they couldn't get back to their form. But as you get older and you read those things, W.D. Lawrence was a man, I think some American guy, and he wrote lots of books about. He believed in the supernatural, levitation, and things like that, and how to make money. It's like the book How to Win Friends and Make whatever, how to make friends. It was a book like that, I guess, but knowing Dominicans, maybe they wanted to. Dominicans said he read the one money, he wanted to make money, so he read the Lawrence book. And I don't think the Lawrence was nothing like what these people assumed, But anytime you saw a mad person, he was doing the Lawrence, he was dealing with the Lawrence, so he got mad. And a lot of people may.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too had to deal with people that probably had mental health conditions. So they were probably talking to themselves. We probably had people who were schizophrenic and needed mental health attention. But because at the time we were ignorant, we didn't know anything about mental health. We simply labeled them as Sukuya and Lagarous. But of course, we want to keep taking the comments on Facebook because we have some wonderful feedback coming in. Patricia says, why were their coffins covered in purple coming from school in the countryside and that funeral on the road in no man land? You had to run for your life. You can't sleep at night. Dreadful moments. And then let's see as well. We have Sam again, and he says, yeah, but if the moose hatched and you didn't tell it, you're its master. Listen carefully. You did not tell it you're its master. Before it tell you it's your master, you have to serve it. Is that true?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so you had to claim being the master before the moose can say it's your master, or else you would be in trouble. Was about to ask whether they knew about DeLoreans. My mom said she was about to ask about DeLoreans as well.
She heard about DeLoreans, right?
Yeah, she did.
I heard about it as well.
Go ahead, Thompson.
Yes, and Thompson,
You
you were
know,
saying something.
I was saying, I heard about that the Lawrence as well, and it's the same thing. You know, is people getting money and from the devil and so on. And then if you do something wrong or if it backfires, then you're in problems. Yeah, that's how it was described.
But talking about, I'm to say, where it's not a Sukuya thing, but it's a strange thing. Two strange things that happen. I remember when I was a child, Corpus Christi of the Catholic Church used to be held in the botanical gardens. And they would have this big procession coming down, Valley Road, King George V Street, of all the little First Communion girls going and throwing flowers on the bishop. But that particular Corpus Christi Sunday, there was this girl, and I'm just saying this is the truth here. It's not they say. Her clothes just started sort of just being torn on her, right? It was a strange thing. And they had to take her to her home. And she went to school. I think she went to one day it's called Mother Borgia School, St. Martin School. And the same thing used to happen. But now at home, they used to have these strange things of stones falling on the house, things moving across the house, and the people were tormented in that house, So they say, Zombie, is devil. They have spirits and devil and that. But then my grandfather, who really used to tell us so many things, said, no, this is something called poltergeist. No, that was the first time I heard about that without seeing the movie they have now. And normally when there's a young child, it doesn't happen to every girl, but a young child maybe at that stage where the spirits, it's a supernatural thing, would be around the place. And we have had different things, Sometimes I remember once in Point Michelle, this girl I'm talking about, she used to live on Bath Road, like the lower end of Bath Road by the opposite of Savannah, going towards Victoria Street. And she had a rough time with all these things happening to her and the household. They couldn't sleep because of all these stones falling on the house. And it's not a Sukuya or Lajable story. It's just really a scientific, supernatural kind of thing that happens. It happens, We saw it in the movie Poltergeist, where it was more where they had to exorcise that thing and whatever. It was frightening. But that girl eventually, I think, her mother was in England and they had to send her over to England. She'd be a big woman, a little older than me now,
Yeah, and then the other thing is, I thought we had superstitions in Dominica until I went to Guadeloupe for vacation. And I'm saying this because I just saw my aunt in Guadeloupe, Beverly Bernard, logged on. So I mean, the superstitions in Guadeloupe were twice as crazy. Everything from don't sweep your house after 6 p.m. to if you're coming home after the sun sets, you have to walk in backwards because you do not want anything to follow you in. And then Peter Carbon also chimes in on this discussion. He says Woodford Hill had Diab Lacoste, who had a counterpart in Martinique, who would first visit and have the full story of his client. He lived in the forest with snakes and skeleton of dead animals. When the French people came, he was able to give them their full story. So it looks like there was like cross-pollination of the stories from Guadeloupe, Dominica, and Martinique. We were all in this together.
Because growing up, you always associated Guadeloupe with your café mal, they're doing over. Yes.
Yes, and then Lauren.
No, in fact, not only that, I think in Dominica, they always appeared to me, at least just from listening and hearing what people are talking about, that it was stronger in Guadeloupe and in Haiti, right? So that if you could not get to do somewhat in Mali in Dominica, then you would travel to Guadeloupe or you would travel to Haiti, to what they call Gade, I think that's
Gade.
Gade is affair.
And then Lauren says you had to go to the sea and drown the moose after 3 nights, right? If you got greedy and did not do that, it would overpower the owner there is a family from Portsmouth who it is claimed had to leave Dominica. The father alone stayed back, and the moose used him to beat him, to beat him. And she said, and then she said, Tim Tim.
No, interesting enough, I did that several years ago. I was on DBS Radio and we had a program on that. We actually talked about that. And in talking about it, somebody from Portsmouth called and said, yeah, they know the man. They said the man had 12 3-ton trucks. Okay. 12 3-ton trucks. You know those trucks they used to have before. Yeah. He said he had 12 of those, and then it was that moose that gave it to him. But he said the moose was not a creature. The moose was really a short little man with a beard. That's how he defined the moose. He said, yeah, people used to feed him out of the moose and so on, and he used to give him the money. And that's when apparently he did something, he was probably tired and so on, fed up. He wanted to go back, and that is when you either drown it or it takes over. It takes you over. Yeah.
Truly fascinating stories. Truly fascinating stories about, so many characters. And I think part of it too was entertainment. Because, like you mentioned in your article, Thompson, many of the villages had no lights, right? There was no TV, internet, none of the things we had right now. So, at night, especially under the bright light of a moon, it was probably a great way just to embellish different stories. They probably had their origins in something that happened in the village where somebody suddenly became rich and everyone was wondering, well, how did you become so rich? And the person refused to say, so they made a story.
They made a story, yeah. No, but to us, it was more than just, it had to describe it now, because years later you can look back on it. But growing up in that kind of environment, like you said, no lights, La Bella and La Lo making ding dong, Luga wants to play outside and so on. But it had an impact on you as well, because I remember this particular story. In fact, one night, they used to say that the Sukuya would suck your head, and I could swear there were times that kids would sleep probably chewing chiclet, right? So if they could sleep, probably the chiclet stick in their hair, and when they pull it out, they come out and they say, yeah, you see, the Sukuya was sucking you last night, because they would see this patch of, in your hair, that kind of thing. So I remember this particular night, I heard it was about probably 3 early in the morning, and I heard this noise, like a cock crowing, right? But the cock came on the house. And I tell you, I got up and I heard this kind of noise on the house, and my entire body started to shiver, because I know, once you hear a cock come at that time on the house, is not a cock, is somebody's a Sukuya. So I got up now to go and tell my dad, right, to go to the room where my dad was. And I could not speak. I could not utter a word, and I just kind of stood over him. But later on, I realized it was just fear. It wasn't anything about it. But it was just that a Sukuya, telling that a Sukuya, a Sukuya, just like I am frozen with fear, and trying to, and I just over. And then he suddenly just got up and saw me standing there, trying to speak. And it was like, what happened to you? That kind of thing. But for us, it was not just a story. For us, it happened because people were pointing out this is the thing, you see Nilalo, you see Nilabel, you hearing of things happening to people. I give you the story about this child that they touched her hair and so on, and she was crying and so, because she believed deep down that this person had messed her up. She could not pass the common entrance, that kind of thing, so these things, it was more than just stories for us. It was reality. It was it was real.
Speaking of stuff on the house, Marva Charles says, I have heard a lot of noises on the roof of the house. Also have seen bright lights and hearing the truck running down the road during the night. My mom and brother have seen that tall man standing at the foot of her bed. No, that's scary. That is very, very scary. Yeah.
We had
go ahead.
we had a friend from Colombia, and he worked in Dominican Republic for a while, bordering, close to the border of Haiti. And he told us he told us that he was in his bed sleeping, and then all of a sudden he just felt uncomfortable. He woke up from the sleep, right? And when he turned, at the foot of the bed was this beautiful, tall lady. This man said, I'm not lying, And he said that the next day he moved from the house because the thing was so real. And it just like faintly went away. I would die. I would die, But talking about, he had this joke about me when I was young and innocent little girl. I saw this lady with this real red mark by her neck, So I said, oh my goodness, a Sukuya sucked you last night, And I said, you have to put sand in front of your house for the Sukuya to come in and whatever. For me, didn't know it was a hiki,
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking.
But I was young, I was, I didn't know about hiki. And I thought it was a Sukuya that sucked the lady because the Sukuya sucked people and leave a red mark.
But I mean, those stories were right in our homes, because I remember stories growing up of my mom talking about, because my dad was a very light-skinned man. So
I know your dad,
Yes.
I know your dad and mom.
You did? Oh, good.
Of course I know.
I think my mom says she knows you, but my dad has since passed. And
yes,
then,
I know.
Yes, and then she would say, he would wake up and he would have all these scratches on his back because he was attacked by, Sukuya, Lagarous in the middle of the night.
Yes.
Like, you know what? Whether there's any truth to the story, I think the most important thing is that people actually believed it.
They believed. And, I'm thinking now that we're going through this COVID pandemic, there are so many pluses, to it, because it gives you the opportunity, especially if your children or grands, to share these little stories.
Yes.
And I'm saying, man, this thing should be recorded, in book form or something that they know, because somehow there's been like a gap from when we were growing up to now. Because even now, I'm away from my actual home now. So I'm with my kids more up north. So I was at one home, but now because of what is going on, I'm more stuck to one home. So I'm giving my daughter and her husband, not apart from all these stories, like things that happened long ago. They said, but Mom, I never knew about that. And it's like history hidden. And we should, because to us growing up, it wasn't history. It was the thing that happened at the time. But for them, it's history. And those things should be recorded.
Yes, and that's why I thought of the idea and I brought it to Thompson, because I was thinking, we have all this history, and my daughter is growing up here in the States. She will never hear these stories. Because she's not in the environment where those stories were told, where we would get together and just talk about the different stories of our past. So this is a great way to record it, to ensure that we can pass the stories on, to preserve it, and to celebrate our culture. So thank you again for coming on to share the stories.
And interestingly enough, I asked somebody some time ago about why it is that, in the 60s, 70s and so on, we had a lot of Sukuya and so on. What happened? Why we don't have as much Sukuya? And they said, well, the main reason why we don't have as much Sukuya today is because, once we start having transport in Dominica, the gas from the vehicles is what...
Some people say since electricity was introduced, but
wait, so the gas from the vehicles kill the Sukuyas?
The gas from the vehicles somehow has an impact on them, so they can't really function. They can't really function in the Sukuya road.
I just think that too many of them flew over the churches, because apparently they wanted to kill them. Just make sure they fly over the church.
They used to say this bright light, and that was a Sukuya. But now, as I grow older, I'm saying, listen to me now, this could have been UFOs, You know, and it could have been UFOs. It could be a UFO sighting, and people have said it was a Sukuya.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed this conversation. Thompson, I'm not sure if you have anything else that you would like to add before we wrap up.
Okay, I'm just saying, I have a lot of, but I'm just saying we don't have. But there were stories of. You ever heard of a thing called Jé, where people would get dreams to go to dig up something,
Yes.
and they would get money
Yes.
and whatever, and somehow sometimes the monies would just disappear, submerge, go back down, and they never got it. But the story was that long ago the plantation owners or whatever, or the rich people, they would have money, they would put in a jar, which is a jet as they would call in patois, or a box or something, and they would send a slave down or a servant down to dig. They would dig and to place it down there, and while the person was in there, they would shoot them as a guard, a watch guard over their money. And then for some reason, these owners never went back to get their money. So they were saying that the people were getting dreams, but they were the relatives of the slaves that were shot in there. They were getting dreams leading them to where the money was. And they would go and start to dig the earth. You know, they would be like in a trance and go scraping the earth too. And they would get the money. And just as they about getting the money, so the story went, the money would just go down. There was a story when I was growing up, a girl maybe who used to go to St. Martin's School. She just got up from the class, went to some part of the yard closer to the Virgin Lane part over the wall there, and just started digging, you know, for that money, for that dream she had gotten. But the mother Bodger went across and gave her a slap for leaving the class, and the money just went back down. That is the story. That's the story.
No, but interesting that.
Talk, Thompson. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was interesting that you mentioned that, because this is not as far-fetched as we think. In fact, there was a story in the newspapers probably about in the 90s, actually in the 90s. I try to remember when in St. Thomas, there was this Dominican guy who went to St. Thomas and who was of that same mindset about the J business. And he got into some difficulties, you know, because I think he ended up killing somebody. I don't want to repeat this, so I don't remember it clearly now, but it had to do with something about a J, that some dream he had about where that money was. And in the process of uncovering the money, he got involved with some other person, and the person got killed, and so on. And it was in the newspapers. But the newspapers reported that at the heart of this was this guy who came from Dominica, who believed that there was a certain pot of money somewhere that he had access to. So, you know, people, I mean, you know, there is very often a kind of a faint line between reality and superstition and this, and it's a very difficult line sometimes to draw.
But this was fascinating, and you know, it kind of leads us to a whole other conversation we can cover, the power of dreams, because Tina was just talking about dreams, and we've had several occasions in our family with having experiences with dreams, and one of those that stand out for me is when my great aunt passed away, and we put all natural wreaths of flowers on her grave, and there were only 2 artificial wreaths on her grave. And my mom had a dream that she said, "Go and remove the 2 artificial wreaths from my grave." How is that possible?
Yeah.
How is that
These things
possible?
happen.
So, you know, we've had several incidents of dreams, and in the dream, in the dream, my great aunt is telling her, the 2 artificial wreaths that you all put on my grave, and it wasn't from the family, it was from somebody else.
Yeah.
Somebody else brought the artificial reefs, and she's telling them, "Go and remove those artificial reefs from my grave." I mean, I say that and I still get shivers to this day.
Yeah, these things happen, and people say, "No, but those things happen. Those things happen." No, that is reality. In spirit, reality.
But that's a whole other conversation we can have.
And it is unexplained, you know. It is unexplained because it's all about, you know, spirit realm and natural realm. Yeah, you know, it's It really is. It really is.
And finally,
You know?
Sam says the Flying Crackle is a good place to start. He puts the website if anybody's interested. Roy Sanford and others have some great stories. So I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation.
Yes, indeed, and you're absolutely correct. We need to really you know, read the stories. I did some articles, but I think we need to do more than that. You know, we need to preserve this because somehow these stories
Get
took
lost.
us through. You know, and they can easily get lost if we don't keep them alive and keep repeating them. Absolutely.
Yes, I want to thank everyone who joined us today on the Facebook Live and of course on TDN Radio. And this will also be airing on Lifeline at 10 a.m. Sunday morning with Dr. Thompson Fountain. Thompson, I think I just took over your hosting of the program.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think we're so used to co-hosting sometimes that I kind of just fed up your energy, and I know you don't mind. So I'll let you wrap up.
No, that's perfectly right. No, perfect. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for saying that. We'll have a repeat tomorrow. I think a lot more people will be exposed to it as well. But it's something that we need to really keep talking about. I think it is part of our tradition. In between that, I believe that people have used some of that to really do people ill. I also believe that as well, that people have suffered on account of that. I mean, I'm sure you have stories, you've heard stories of people making people mad, as they say. I don't want to say that, in my mind, I'm thinking that's not possible, but some of the stories are so compelling that you have to think that there may just be some truth about it. I mean, you like to think that, you're a modern thinker, that, everything is scientific, but it is quite possible that in between you have some element of truth, and probably people believe so strongly about something, it could happen to them, so they believe so strongly in evil that person have those powers. Like, for example, the opium. Why do people go to opium? People literally pay their money to this day, today, tonight, as we somebody's man, trying to do somebody mal, trying to, capture somebody or do something. So people still believe in those things. Yeah.
And we want to thank everyone who joined us on Facebook. We have Yanni who says, yes, I would like my children to know them. It needs to be documented. Thank you for that. So thank you, Thompson. Thank you, Tina. And of course, I'm Simone Matthew from Push Past 10. And this was a wonderful conversation on the importance of preserving our oral storytelling traditions. And we look forward to doing it again. I had so much fun. I'm hoping that we will continue this conversation and others will jump in as well to share their personal experiences. I keep hearing a lot about Lapland and Granby. So hopefully we can have a few people share their experiences as well. So thank you for being here. Again, a collaboration of TDN Radio, Push Past 10 and Q95 FM as we continue to celebrate and preserve our culture. This was wonderful. You guys have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sivan and Tina. It was great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.